Imagine trying to achieve an out-of-body experience for like 20 years.
Oh, wow. 20 years is a long time to practice anything.
Right. And when the breakthrough finally happens, it doesn't involve soaring through the cosmos or meeting spiritual guides.
Yeah, that's usually the expectation, right? The grand mystical journey.
Exactly. But instead, it lasts exactly 3 seconds. And, well, it feels more like a computer crashing, and it basically leaves you fundamentally questioning the mechanics of your own perception.
Which is just a fascinating contrast to what we usually hear.
Totally. So today's deep dive is based on this incredibly meticulously detailed real-time log. It's actually a letter written to someone named Siva.
Right, the letter to Siva.
Yeah. And it documents exactly what happens when our biological hardware sort of short circuits on the very edge of sleep.
It's really a unique document.
It is. Our mission today is to dissect the anatomy of this extremely fleeting phenomenon. We really want to get into the specific visual anomalies, the unexpected physical sensations, and, the mechanical rules the author actually discovered.
Yeah, and giving you, the listener, a real inside look at how consciousness behaves right on that threshold.
Exactly.
Because it is a remarkable piece of documentation. What makes this letter so valuable is its clinical detachment.
Yeah, they really step back from it.
They do. I mean, this isn't a polished spiritual memoir layered with, retrospective narrative.
Right. It's not romanticized at all.
No, not at all. The author is practically acting as a neuroscientist observing their own mind.
Which is wild to think about doing in real time.
It really is. It strips away all that mysticism usually associated with extrasensory perception or out-of-body experiences. It basically challenges us to look purely at the intersection of perception, biology, and imagination.
And the timeline of this breakthrough is really where that clinical detachment just shines. I mean, like I said, the author had been attempting this for almost 2 decades.
2 decades of basically trial and error.
Yeah. And when it finally happens in this semi-awakened state, they don't describe, a gentle floating sensation.
Right. None of the typical floating out of the bed stuff.
Nope. They describe a violent, really abrupt 3-second event. And they actually break it down by the second.
Which is just incredible presence of mind.
It totally is. So in the very first second, there is total, absolute disorientation. Like they had no idea where they were.
Complete spatial failure.
Exactly. No context, no geography. Just blank.
Which is a profound departure from how our brains normally construct reality.
Yeah. Because we usually always know where we are.
Right. Usually even in a deep dream or, say, a sudden awakening, your brain's spatial mapping system instantly provides a context.
Like you're in a room or you're falling or something.
Exactly. You are falling, you are running. But here, the author experiences pure, raw presence without any spatial anchor at all.
Wow.
It is consciousness completely divorced from the environment.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because that leads into the second, which is honestly even stranger.
Oh, the translation failure.
Yeah, exactly. The author notes that they were clearly seeing something, like a distinct visual, but their brain entirely failed to translate the visual data.
Right, the cognitive understanding was just broken.
Yeah, I mean, the image was there, but the meaning wasn't. And if this is just a vivid dream, I mean, our brains are usually incredible at assigning meaning to random shapes, right?
Oh, absolutely. We see faces in clouds. We build narratives out of static on a TV.
Exactly. So I keep thinking it sounds exactly like a computer booting up a heavy program. First there's a blank screen, then you get that scrambled code, and finally the high-res desktop loads.
That is a perfect analogy, actually.
But why does the brain's rendering engine completely fail to translate the image in that specific middle second? Is it because the visual input isn't coming through the biological optic nerve?
Well, what's fascinating here is the sheer meta-awareness required to even observe your own translation failure.
Yeah, to sit there and think, I am seeing something I don't understand.
Right. You are touching on a concept deeply rooted in how the visual cortex communicates with associative memory.
Okay, how does that work normally?
Well, in standard perception, your eyes capture light, and your brain instantly cross-references that shape with your memory banks to categorize it.
Like, that's a chair, that's a tree.
Exactly. But in this specific threshold state, which is often related to the hypnagogic state, that borderland between wakefulness and sleep, the default mode network is shutting down.
But their conscious awareness is still hyperactive.
Yes. The author is receiving a massive stream of visual data, but it is entirely bypassing the biological optic pathways.
So the eyes aren't involved at all.
Right. And without that physical routing, The brain's associative memory just struggles to attach a known label to the raw data stream.
Ah, so they're observing the raw code of perception before the graphical user interface is loaded.
Spot on. That's exactly what's happening.
That makes the arrival of the third second incredibly jarring then.
Because the interface finally loads.
Yes, after the disorientation and after the scrambled code of the translation failure, suddenly that graphical interface loads with just hyper clarity.
And what they see is remarkably specific.
So specific. The author describes a full natural daylight forest landscape. And the camera of their mind, that's really the best way to describe it, slowly zooms onto a very specific stone monument of a human figure.
And the structural integrity of that monument is really what sets this apart from typical hypnagogic hallucinations.
Right, because usually those sleep edge visions are kind of mushy, right?
Exactly. Usually imagery on the edge of sleep is fluid. It morphs. A tree turns into a person. A face melts into a geometric pattern.
Like a weird Salvador Dali painting.
Right. But the author explicitly notes that the edges of the stone monument were straight lines with sharp angles.
Wow.
It possessed an uncompromising, solid geometry.
And the specific details of the face are so stark. I mean, one of the figure's hands was covering the left eye, which looked like a hole bored straight into the stone.
Like a physical recess in the rock.
Yeah. And the right eye was just another hole. It was so structurally sound that the author actually drew a sketch of it to attach to the letter to Siva.
Which really underscores how vivid it was.
Seriously.
Yeah.
And there were no other monuments around, just one stark figure in the daylight. And then right at the height of this clarity, they snap violently back to their apartment.
And just like that, it's over.
The experience is over. 3 seconds total.
The sudden termination is a classic hallmark of these altered states, actually.
Oh, really? It just kicks you out.
Yeah. The physical body, sensing a profound shift in conscious equilibrium, basically reasserts its dominance and pulls the awareness back to the physical room.
Oh, like a safety mechanism.
Exactly. But the psychological impact of those 3 seconds is enormous. I mean, it provided the author with an undeniable data point after 20 years of failure.
And that structural permanence naturally pushed the author to figure out the underlying mechanics of how to get back there.
Yeah, they wanted to reverse engineer the state.
Exactly. And through their subsequent journal entries, they outlined 2 strict, non-negotiable requirements for this to work.
And there are very specific conditions.
Super specific. First, the body must have good energy and high intensity. This isn't about deep relaxation or being exhausted after a long day.
Right, it's not about falling asleep because you're tired.
Yeah. And second, it has to happen in a daylight awakening state, specifically lying horizontally on a bed during an afternoon.
And they do something interesting with their thoughts, too.
Yeah, they intentionally let their mind wander on trivial, unimportant thoughts, basically to keep the conscious brain occupied without letting it slip into actual sleep.
What they are doing there is deliberately manipulating their brainwave frequencies.
How so?
Well, by attempting this in the daylight afternoon, they are preventing the circadian rhythm from pulling the brain into slow, restorative delta wave sleep.
Because the sun is out, the body knows it's daytime.
Exactly. They're keeping the mind in an active alpha or beta state while simultaneously inducing a physical stillness that's akin to sleep paralysis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they are basically engineering a high-friction environment between a highly active mind and an immobilized body.
And that friction leads to a massive realization that they logged on Saturday, May 16th. For 2 decades, the author believed that simply starting an out-of-body experience was the impossible hurdle.
But they find out they were wrong.
Totally wrong. They discover the exact opposite. The phenomenon is actually highly accessible under those physical conditions.
Access isn't the problem.
Right, the actual impossibility is focusing the mind once you cross the threshold. The author describes the mind wandering through dozens of different scenes at this violent, incredible speed.
Like flipping through channels way too fast.
Yes. The images shift before the colors can even register.
It is a total loss of cognitive traction.
Cognitive traction.
Yeah. When you are awake, your physical eyes lock onto a fixed object in your room, and that ocular muscle tension acts as an anchor for your visual cortex.
Oh, so your eyes physically hold your mind in place.
Exactly. Your consciousness has a tether. But in this state, the physical body is no longer anchoring consciousness.
So it just drifts.
More like it spins out of control. Without that ocular tether, the mind's eye acts like a camera lens whipping around in a hurricane. It captures fragments, but it cannot stabilize the frame.
Here's where it gets really interesting,
Mhm.
because the author humbly compares their fleeting 3 seconds to experts like William Bullman.
Right, Bullman claims to have dozens of years of controlled experiences.
Yeah. And the author admits that true control is incredibly rare for the rest of the world. But if the mind is flying through these scenes so violently fast that colors don't even register, we have to look critically at the source of the imagery.
That is the big question.
Right, like how do we distinguish this hyperspeed wandering from just a chaotic shuffling of a dreaming brain? If the critical faculty is struggling to hold on to a single image, couldn't this simply be the rapid firing of a highly active imagination slipping into early REM sleep, rather than an authentic out-of-body state?
That's a very fair critique. But if we connect this to the bigger picture of the author's methodology, the strict insistence on the daylight awakening state is the key differentiator.
Okay, because REM sleep is different.
Radically different. In a standard REM cycle, your brain chemistry fundamentally shifts. The prefrontal cortex, which is the area responsible for logic, critical thinking, and self-awareness, it essentially powers down.
Which is why dreams feel so real, right? Like you don't question the weird stuff.
Exactly. No matter how absurd a dream is, you lack the biological hardware to question it in the moment. But this author is maintaining that prefrontal activation.
Because they're awake.
Right. They are acutely, frustratingly aware of their inability to focus. They are analyzing the speed of the imagery in real time.
So they're thinking, I can't focus on this.
Yes, and that level of active, critical observation is biologically incompatible with deep REM sleep. The struggle isn't that they are lost in a dream. The struggle is that they are fully awake in a space where the physical laws of visual stabilization no longer apply.
Wow. That lack of an anchoring mechanism explains why the visions are so violently unstable. But, it entirely fails to explain how the mind is able to manipulate the imagery it actually does briefly catch.
And that leads to the next entry.
Exactly. This paradox sets up a journal entry from Thursday, May 21st, where the author logs another experience. It's even shorter, about 1.5 seconds, but the visuals behave in a way that just completely defies biological physics.
The location analysis fails again, but instead of a forest, the visual cortex snaps onto a highly specific object.
Yeah, a biology map sitting on a table.
A map featuring color pictures of anatomical structures and animals.
Right, and the one detail the author catches in that tiny 1.5-second flash is a small duck.
A small duck.
Just a small duck on a biology map. It is entirely mundane, yet what happens next breaks every rule of human perception. The vision attempts to physically zoom in on the map.
The zoom anomaly.
Yes. The author is deeply analytical about how bizarre this is. They state explicitly in the letter to Siva that human eyes do not have a zoom function.
Which is medically correct.
Right. Biological vision requires the ciliary muscles to alter the shape of the lens for focus, but you cannot optically magnify an image without physically walking closer to it.
You can't just zoom your eyes like a telephoto lens.
Exactly. A mechanical camera zoom requires multiple glass elements moving along a barrel. Furthermore, the author is 62 years old. They wear glasses.
So their physical visual hardware is degrading.
Yes. So what does this all mean? I mean, it's as if their consciousness bypassed the failing hardware of their 62-year-old eyes and suddenly downloaded digital camera software. How does a consciousness execute a flawless mechanical zoom, a software capability their body has literally never possessed?
It induces what researchers call ontological shock.
Ontological shock. What is that?
That is the profound psychological disorientation that occurs when your fundamental understanding of reality, of what is physically possible, is shattered by a direct experience.
Like realizing you can zoom with your mind.
Exactly. If we look at the standard psychological explanations for hypnagogic imagery, it's usually memory consolidation. It is your brain mashing up Tetris blocks, faces, or familiar places you saw that day.
But the author unequivocally states they have never seen this biology map, right?
Right. They had never seen the map, the duck, or the sharp-angled stone monument in their waking life.
They are completely novel objects.
Exactly. So if these visions are not memories being recalled and they are not fluid dreams generated by the subconscious, we are left with a staggering question about spatial mapping.
Like, where is this coming from?
Yes. The author's mind is simulating a mechanical process, a camera zoom, to navigate a highly specific static geometry they have never encountered. It forces us to ask whether the mind is generating an unfathomably detailed, persistent internal universe, or if the author's consciousness is temporarily accessing an external reality through a non-biological lens.
And you would naturally assume that accessing a state that profound, a state where you are operating non-biological visual machinery, would require immense mental discipline.
Like a complex meditation practice.
Yeah, deep visualization or chanting or
Oh.
something. But the author abandons mental techniques entirely. They conclude that step-by-step cognitive methods are practically useless.
Which goes against almost all modern esoteric advice.
Exactly. Instead, they trace the catalyst of these events to raw, highly localized physical physiology.
The shift from cognitive analysis to somatic observation in the letter is abrupt and incredibly telling.
Somatic meaning of the body.
Yes, they stop looking at their brain and start looking at their nervous system. They detail intense physical symptoms that act as the gateway to these visual anomalies.
And the specific symptom they highlight is really surprising. It's an intense energy burst originating from the left testicle.
Extremely localized.
Very. They describe this energy shooting directly upward, traveling along the center line of the body to reach the heart, and then radiating outward across the entire abdominal area.
It presents an incredible paradox.
It really does. I mean, it is fascinating that a deeply mental, almost ethereal, digital visual experience of zooming in on a map is triggered by an intensely localized, deeply physical nerve impulse.
Yeah, it really does.
It completely grounds the out-of-body experience right back firmly in the visceral reality of the human body.
This raises an important question about how our modern scientific vocabulary maps against historical human experience.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the author openly admits to Siva that they have absolutely no scientific or medical insight into what is happening to them. They don't have the neurobiological framework to explain a massive sympathetic nervous system discharge originating from the pelvic floor.
Right, they just know what they felt.
Exactly. So, lacking a medical vocabulary, they instinctively search for a historical one. They ask Siva if any sacred Indian esoteric texts or old spiritual books cover this sequence of events.
Well, they make a point of stating they have never read those texts.
Which is crucial.
Right. They are essentially flying blind, asking, has anyone else in history recorded this exact physical sequence right before their perception shifted?
And their instinct to look toward those specific texts is brilliantly accurate.
Oh, really? It matches up.
Perfectly. Without any prior bias, without any reading to plant the idea in their subconscious, the author is describing a near-perfect biological manifestation of what ancient traditions categorize as the rising of Kundalini energy.
Wow, Kundalini.
Yes. In those frameworks, it is described as a dormant energy resting at the base of the spine that, when activated, travels upward through the energetic centers or chakras toward the heart and the crown, profoundly altering consciousness along the way.
The fact that they are reverse engineering an ancient spiritual framework using only raw data from their own nervous system is remarkable.
It really is.
I mean, they aren't trying to achieve a mystical awakening. They're just logging the mechanical failure and triumph of their own perception, and they arrive at the exact same somatic coordinates that ancient mystics mapped thousands of years ago.
It bridges the seemingly impossible gap between the mechanical view of human biology and the vast, unexplained potential of human consciousness.
It really connects the two.
It suggests that these altered states are not just tricks of the mind, but deeply integrated biological processes waiting for the right frequency to trigger them.
So, to bring all these disparate threads together for you listening, today we've dissected a 20-year pursuit that finally yielded a startling 3-second window into the mechanics of the mind.
It's been quite the journey.
It has. We've explored the cognitive translation failure that occurs when raw data bypasses the optic nerve, resulting in a hyperclear vision of a sharp-angled stone monument.
We examine the friction between a waking mind and a resting body, highlighting the violent, hyperspeed wandering of consciousness when it lacks an ocular anchor.
And we analyze the profound ontological shock of the zoom anomaly, where the mind executed impossible visual physics on a simple biology map featuring a small duck.
And finally, we grounded all of those ethereal anomalies into a sudden, intense burst of physical energy traveling from the base of the body to the heart.
A biological catalyst so potent it mirrored ancient texts the author had never even read. It is a compelling reminder that the boundary between our normal waking reality, the vividness of deep sleep, and accessing entirely unknown landscapes of consciousness might be much thinner and much more mechanical than any of us realize.
It is a threshold that demands both intense physical energy and the delicate suspension of the waking mind, challenging everything we assume about how reality is rendered.
So, we will leave you with this final provocative thought to explore on your own. Think back to that initial expectation of precision we all have about our own senses. The comforting idea that our biological hardware is the absolute limit of what we can perceive. If this author's highly structured visions are truly neither fluid dreams nor recalled memories.
And if they're truly novel objects.
Exactly. And if our physical eyes are strictly bound by the biological limits of age and distance, while our mind's eye can subtly execute a flawless digital zoom like a camera, then what exactly is the lens through which we are looking when the physical body rests but the mind fully awakens?